Hi, and welcome to another exciting episode of Inspiring Honesty. I'm your host, Greg Brahe, and I'm an atheist. However, today I'm going to be basically just redoing the topic that we tried to approach last week, where I came extremely ill prepared to take on my incredible co-host, Bob Graves. Bob, how you doing today? I'm catching you as
I'm
you're
doing,
drinking water this time.
yeah, I
I
know
can
I'm doing
see you
great. I'm
today.
doing
It's exciting.
great. Yeah, in fact, I'm relaxing,
Oh,
ready for the onslaught that you intend to bring.
Oh, excellent. Well, today the topic that I want to reapproach is a post that you shared on your timeline, I guess now about almost 2 weeks ago.
Right,
That was a TEDx talk from
right,
Austin, Texas, made by Robin O'Brien in 2011 about genetically modified organisms.
right.
This one immediately set my skeptic sense off. I watched the video all the way through several times now because I was taking some notes and picking it apart a bit more. But as I watched, well, to be honest, the first time when I watch these videos, I try to just listen to them so that I don't get distracted by the visuals. That's my thing. But as I listened to it the first time, there were several claims that just I didn't even know what to make of. And as it went on more, I was it was mind-boggling the
Yeah,
ways in which she was drawing these connections, and essentially without showing the video on here, what I'll explain here is that this Robin O'Brien is a mom. She's a seemingly very nice lady and very concerned about her children, and that's an excellent thing for her. And one day, her son had a reaction while he was eating breakfast, and had a severe reaction. They had to go to the hospital, and she got there, and the doctor told her that the or her son was having an allergic reaction, and she was completely confused. She said he was eating Eggo waffles and yogurt and what was the third thing in there? Eggs, scrambled eggs. And she
yeah.
said, well, that's three of the top eight food allergy items, and it's over 90%. This is a statistic I had to dig up from there, but over 90% of all food allergies fall within eight food items. So that's, of course, it does include the um, eggs, the dairy, and the wheat that would be in the waffles, the wheat
Awful.
gluten.
Yeah,
Um, but there's also peanuts, tree nuts, soy, fish, and shellfish. Those are
yeah.
the other ingredients that set that off. So um, she then, again, being a concerned mother, went home to try to figure out why this was happening because she had never remembered her friends having food allergies or knowing anybody with food allergies when she was a kid, and came up with some startling numbers. She said that looking at the CDC website and a handful of other ones, by Google University, she was able to discover that 1 out of 17 kids now has a food allergy, and that the number has doubled since 1997. She said that in that same period of time, hospitalizations for food allergies increased 265%. And that's huge.
It
Um,
is.
and I have to say that last statistic is absolutely accurate. That 265% increase in hospitalizations for food allergies. This is specifically based on what's written on the discharge paperwork for why these people are sent
Yeah.
out. Um,
What's the percentage?
well, it went up by 265%. It's now somewhere about, I don't have that one directly in front of me at the moment, but I can get it in just a second. It's, I think, about 9,000 now, and it used to be 4,000. No, that's too high. It's 6,000 now, and it used to be less than 2,000, or just over 2,000. I don't remember exactly. It's close to those numbers, but it's not a huge number. Okay, here it is. I found it. So between 2004 and 2006, the average annual admission rate for children under 18 years old was 9,537. In 1998 to 2000, it was 2,615. So that's where the numbers came from, and actually that's even bigger than 265% increase. That's more than triple. Um, and again, that's a significant thing. But here's a few things. One, before we even get into the conclusions that she drew from this, that I wanted to talk about with those numbers is food allergies are a complicated uh, aspect of biomedical science, and we've gotten a lot better at identifying them in the last 10 years, or at least so we think. There was a study released earlier this year examining 75 different studies that used three different methods for discovering food allergies that showed that they're actually not all that reliable. So we are quite possibly overestimating the number of food
To show
allergies.
that what's not all that reliable,
It,
specifically what wasn't reliable.
the diagnoses of food allergies, we're over-diagnosing them, is what this study is determining. Is basically we're starting to use blood tests, saliva tests, and skin scratch tests that are really bringing up greater. We can see the IgE antibody that is, specifically a reaction. But I think that this IgE antibody, yes, it is the antibody that is associated with allergies. But when we, in common language, talk about food allergies, we consider real allergic reactions. Now, these tiny skin tests and these blood tests will report any reaction at all. Even the tiniest little reaction is certainly going to be noted at the very least. So I have an article. I have a series of articles, and I'll make all of these available that are related to this, along with a huge amount of.
Are the reports categorized in terms of severity?
Well, this is just for the diagnosis that they are in fact allergic. Yeah, I'm sure that there is a categorization of the degree of allergy, but even if we disregard that and say that, okay, so the number of diagnoses has gone up. And by the way, she said that it is now 1 in 17 and that the number is doubled. Neither of those is true. In fact, the number is closer to 1 in 25 children under 18. So 4% is experiencing some sort of food allergy, and that number is up 18%, which is not nearly the same as a 100% increase. Again, I'm getting these right from the CDC website that she said she got them from. So I don't know where she cited that, but I've corroborated it across multiple different sources. And it does seem pretty consistent. There are some that will evaluate it up to 7 or 8%, but they tend to have sort of a broader scope for what they consider to be a food allergy. And they don't have any historical data on those to be able to compare it to the past. So I don't know where she was going with that one, or where she was coming from with that one. But the other major factor in this is I think we need to recognize that these food allergies, everybody has heard about food allergies. We're terrified to bring peanuts into an elementary school. I mean, there's signs posted, no peanuts. When at the elementary school, I drop the boy off that I babysit, and we're worried. You go to I went to get my hair cut yesterday, or my son's haircut.
Some people are deathly allergic to peanuts, unfortunately.
Oh, absolutely. It's a severe allergy, and I will not, I do not mean to diminish that at all. Do you know how many people die from food allergies in the United States every year? On average? 10. 10 people. That's not 10 per 100,000. It is 10 deaths from food allergies every year in the United States, which is a absurdly small number. So it is certainly treatable. A large degree of food allergies also go away after we turn 18 or as we age. So that was just discussing food allergies, how it's a little bit more complex. But the reason that it irked me here is that she looked at this increase in food allergy that she saw a graph for, and then noticed that there was also an increase in genetically modified organisms in the food supply during that time period. She saw a correlation, and she drew a very, very direct causal link to the point where she has been very actively campaigning about this, and she compared herself with Erin Brockovich, or I guess other people have compared her with Erin Brockovich, and she contacted her, and they worked together and doing this. Now she's doing TED Talks to spread the dangers of genetically modified organisms out, and it's not science. As a matter of fact, I've looked into the science that supports this because Bob, I think it was you that said in that conversation. The reason that I wanted to call you out on this specifically is because this is I quote from your response to me.
Right.
There is no scientific evidence that GMOs are safe. And my response to that is, of course not. That's something that we cannot conclude with any sort of absolute, this is safe. There's no scientific evidence that says that pens are safe, because in fact, people hurt themselves with pens all the time. But it's reasonably safe, and safer than, or as safe as any alternative is what we need to consider that. Would you agree, at least to that genetically modified crops
I don't know. Could we compare it with the concept that is there any scientific evidence that guns are safe? I mean, how are we defining safe, and how are we defining scientific evidence of safety?
What I mean here in this particular scope, I think it's only fair and to define safe. I think that should be our goal here. How do we define safe? Yeah. Safe for a food product, especially a modified food product, would be to compare it to the unmodified counterpart, right? That would be the best way to say, is genetically modified corn safe compared to not genetically modified corn?
If there's any way of actually making a comparison, I guess we could do that. But I deny there's a way of making a comparison.
Well, what I can say is that I'm going to pull up my link here so I can quote it as accurately as possible, but somehow my link got... is that there have been... and I'm going to quote here, actually, from the American Medical Association. Now, I can quote from any number of associations. As a matter of fact, I have several infographics here that this one has quotes from the American Medical Association, the American Association for the Advancement of Science, the National Academy of Sciences, Food Standards Australia and New Zealand, the French Academy of Science, World Health Organization. 7 of the world's academies of sciences came together to write a single statement. The Union of German Academics of Sciences and Humanities, the European Commission, and the Royal Society of Medicine are all listed on this particular infographic. If you want to pick a number 1 through 10?
Oh no, I'm well aware of this.
Okay,
totally
well,
aware.
Let me see which one makes my point the clearest here. Here, from the American Medical Association, it says there is no scientific justification for special labeling. That's special labeling. That's sort of a different question here. Okay. This is from the National Academy of the Sciences. To date, more than 98 million acres of genetically modified crops have been grown worldwide. No evidence of human health problems associated with the ingestion of these crops or resulting food products has ever been identified.
Not by them.
Not by...
And it never will be. And I guarantee you, they will never identify it as such.
How can you make such a guarantee? I mean, the National Academy of Sciences has certainly recognized plenty of things as dangerous. That's ephedra.
Sure.
As the supplement for weight loss was removed. There's been...
Sure.
We just got a viewer comment here. Oh, we've been getting several here. It says somewhere around 150 to 200 people in the U.S. die each year because of food allergies. That's not the same statistic that I found. But okay, even if we go with that, 200 people is still not a significant... Yes, of course, it's 20 times the number that I cited. But I will admit to only having found one source. However, I believe that was from the CDC where I cited my source. So that would have that at least reliably reported.
Yeah. Well, let me go back to some of the things you've already mentioned. You did recognize that there was a 265% increase in hospitalizations attributed to food allergies. Now, my question is, why are these kids being hospitalized?
No, hospitalization does not mean admitted to the hospital. They're not spending they are staying overnight. They're frequently emergency room visits. Now, of course, this is a factor that can be compounded by many different things. One, poverty rates are going up and have been going up for some time, and people living in poverty tend to not have health insurance. And in the American system, the emergency room has to cover you if you go there.
Sure.
So it's certainly possible that this many people have been doing this for decades at their local doctor's office. There's another
What? No,
very
no, no. Hold on. Wait a minute. That's just a powerful dismissal. When we're talking about 265% increase, I think it's more likely that that if we were going to invent a story, that these people just before didn't go anywhere. I mean,
that's
because in the
too,
past,
and
walk-in
that's the other
clinics
thing I
are
was going to bring up.
relatively new. I tell you, when I was growing up, if I had to go see a doctor, we had to make an appointment. There was no going to see the doctor when you needed to go see him. There was an appointment. There was, maybe in a week or something like that. So it wasn't until we had walk-in clinics that most people could just, go see a doctor instead of going to the emergency room. In fact, I think walk-in clinics became a way of trying to relieve the stress of an emergency room for really non-emergencies. But I'm thinking 265% increase of people going to the emergency room because they're seeing something that at least concerns them. So do you think that people are so I don't think we can attribute this to some different way of people searching out services,
No, and I
because
think that you need to
we would
grant me
see
a
a
moment here.
decrease we would see a decrease of 80% of people no longer running out to the family doctor
Well, family
for
doctors
these
aren't
things.
reported and recorded in the same ways, but
But
I think you
they
need to grant
still
me a
are
moment on
alive,
this
and they
one and
could be asked questions about, did
qualifying.
this seem to go down? What was that again?
You need to grant me a moment in qualifying on this one because there's more to the answer than just that one. I was saying that is I said there's several compounding factors, and that may be one of them. The other one I already mentioned is that diagnostics have also shown a significant increase. We have better diagnostic tools, and of course, public awareness is a huge one, and public awareness does include doctors. Whenever you talk to doctors, they think horses, not zebras, right? You think of the stuff that is familiar and common that you're aware of. And I have a great article from a Harvard scientist, Nicholas Christakis, talking about the hype that has gone and the hysteria about nut allergies, really driving people into a frenzy of concern, and that has been very well, I guess, propagandized or spread throughout the community, so that doctors are more familiar with the nut allergies, the food allergies, more likely to misdiagnose something as that if it was, or to simply make that diagnosis. Parents also, if you have any sort of reaction to a food now, are concerned that it's going to go into full-blown anaphylactic shock, and therefore are more likely to take their children to the hospital because they're aware that there are people with severe food allergies, and it's a more real
You think so?
concern to
I mean,
them.
I mean that may be, but notice what you're doing. You're dismissing this statistic by talking about possibilities that are themselves much less documented than these anecdotes that you're also trying to knock down. So you're trying to knock something down with stories that bear no more scientific strength than the thing you're trying to knock down.
Well, the
So
things
that
I am, of
concerns
course,
me.
discussing things from
Yeah,
my personal perspective, from the
right.
review that I've done. But the review that I've done has not been me just Googling the statistics and rates and coming up with conclusions. I've been reading articles written by
I know.
people who have been scientifically examining these things and defending
I
these conclusions. And there is
I'm sure
more
you
to it.
have, and I
I'm
have
saying
no
so.
doubt that those articles are there, and I have no doubt that they reach the conclusions you believe they have reached. I just see what strikes me as a level of dishonesty that is part of that culture, and that doctors, for one thing, uh, doctors don't know a damn thing about nutrition. And they study chemistry and they study this, and the kind of studies that you could use to try and show a doctor that there's no problem with the GMO would not really include anything they understand about nutrition.
Well,
So
but
I can't
you're
even.
jumping to
So
GMOs here, Bob, because
what's
we're
that? No, well,
just
I'm well.
this
That's
is
because that's where we're
just food
headed,
allergies. Right? I
right?
mean, at this
But
point, we're just discussing the increase in rates and other potential causes
yeah,
for these increases in rates that
sure.
are just as
Okay, well then,
plausible
okay,
as
then I'll go. Then
GMOs
I'll go
being
back.
at fault.
Oh, but perhaps. But so let me back off then from the GMO where we will be headed later. Um, you know, medical doctors are people who study the biology of the body, particularly in terms of what you need to do when it's time to cut something out and what you need to do when it's time to introduce a chemical. That's about it. And they don't understand health. They don't understand nutrition. They don't really even understand exercise. In fact, they don't even understand cholesterol, because all of the things they're telling us to do about your cholesterol are based upon something that there's actually no scientific evidence that eating a ton of fat is what raises your cholesterol. In fact, you want to know what? One of the highest rates of cholesterol can be found in anorexics. You know, so it's because the body will make its own cholesterol if it feels it needs to. But, so I'm saying that I don't, this is to me doctors speaking outside of their field.
Well,
'Cause yeah,
I'm not talking about medical doctors making
you're
these
talking about the
assertions. I'm
American
talking,
Medical Association, which was backing this up. And I'd like
but
to
the
know about
American
that.
Medical Association is not just medical doctors. This is medical researchers
Right.
that comprise the American Medical
And
Association, which
that
is
again is research medicine, right?
I agree, but there's a significant difference between being a medical researcher and being a medical practitioner, a doctor.
I'm sure there is,
Um,
definitely, yeah. But at the
I mean,
same
it's the
time,
MD versus
background and
PhD.
education of becoming a medical doctor in this country, as well as in most, involves a form of education that is upheld radically by corporate interests that are involved in a wide variety of things who can, they contribute a ton of money to these schools. And I guarantee you, these schools are going to go light and easy on anything that's going to have bad implications on the people who are bringing in most of the money for people who have a high GPA and are going to be hoping to earn a ton of money more than most people do. So I think there's a conflict of interest here and a disingenuousness as to whether or not this is really their field of expertise.
But who else? I mean, the thing is,
Who
these are
else?
not them necessarily doing the research. This is them doing literature reviews about what's been published
Sure.
and saying
That's
this
wonderful.
is not
Have you ever
them
heard of a
testing.
dietitian? Have you ever heard of a dietitian?
Yes.
Okay, I would think that a dietitian's journal would be a far more credible resource for studying food allergies and for studying aspects that have to do with foods, and particularly if we want to get down to the point of studying foods that have actually occurred naturally versus foods that we have somewhat modified. So I think we got the wrong people that we're studying, and I think that we've got people who are financed by something that I think produces such a conflict of interest that I don't say that this means that they're lying. I'm saying it means
But
we
that's
really can't tell what's going on here. We
you're
don't know
drawing
what's.
a pretty big inference from finances, and there's a great
Oh yeah,
resource as well that I'm trying to find because I've got a big list of them here, so I'm making sure I've got the right one to cite. But there's a wonderful website that I specifically listed to you in that one. It's a blog put together by, it's called biofortified.org. It's put together by research professors and graduate students in the field of bioengineering, I guess is the best way. And they have their studies actually broken down. There's a tool called Genera that you can search these things, and you can search it by funding sources. And I have a list of over 200 papers that were published from independent sources, from government sources, and from business sources. So independent would, of course, be We can't
I think
really
you got
tell.
to take a little more sophisticated look at the web of finances, but
Well,
you know,
sure. But what I'm saying, Bob, is that what you're doing is the classic pseudo skepticism, where you're
no, no, no,
drawing
no,
a
no, 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 no.
conclusion.
I'm not saying that this has any merit. I'm just saying that this presents a conflict of interest that leaves us in an undefined state. It
But
leaves
you
us in an
shared her
undefined state.
video.
What's
That's the
that?
point that I'm getting at. You shared her
Sure,
video,
sure, I did. Yeah.
and there's danger in doing that.
Oh,
That's where the
really?
pseudo skepticism comes from. It's not just
Hey,
that you
you're a
say
smart
there's
guy,
more that
right?
we need to look into.
Did I corrupt you, Greg, with that video? Did you see that
No,
video and get
but I'm a
corrupted by it?
smart guy. There's all
Oh,
kinds.
well, wonderful. So you're saying, so what you want to do is you want to win an argument with me by telling me you're smart, but a lot of the people who saw my video are stupid.
I'm saying that it's not only you that shares these videos, and not
Well, it's true.
only you that would have this sort of feeling, but you sharing this video, people know that you're smart. They respect you, and
Yeah.
and rightfully so. For them to then share that video, and smart people
Yeah.
considering it in much the same way that you do, would be then exposing
I
it
can
to an
admit
entirely
this.
new audience of people that
I can
are.
admit this. I grew up in a home where, um, the people that were close to my home were people of, significant influence. And I saw the bias and the contempt that they had as so-called professionals for people who weren't in their league. And so I can definitely admit to the fact that certainly raises my eyebrows when I see the elite of our country, as it were, the so-called scientists and economists and things like
I
this.
think that's an
That,
inherently hypocritical statement, though, to say that there's something wrong with being elitist if you're one of the elite. Would you expect? I mean, I live. I went to college in Green Bay,
what?
so
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to use this reference. Would you expect Aaron Rodgers to be okay with somebody comparing their local high school quarterback to him, and saying that his opinion on how he should be running plays is equally valid? Is that he doesn't have the experience, he doesn't have the expertise? Aaron Rodgers is elite. He is one of the best in the NFL, and that
Wonderful for him.
says
Yes, that's great.
something.
I don't
That's
have a
more
sports
than just.
gene, so I can't even really talk with you much about because um, I couldn't even tell you if there's a team called the Patriots. I couldn't even tell you what sport they play. I mean, that's how dumb I am. Go Patriots or whatever. I don't know who they are. I understand there's a sport team out there called the Indians. I have no clue what they play. Whatever, but. You know, the point of the money that is involved in the medical field, particularly given the kind of arrogance that we have found ourselves dealing with when it comes to the medical profession, I do think that they stand out in a manner that's slightly different from a lot of other people of great education in terms of some of the questions that we could ask concerning them. You know,
I can't disagree with you that there's even been, or it's even been said, that science progresses by funerals. That the paradigm in which we are raised colors the way that we're going to view the world for the remainder of our lives, and unfortunately, there's so many things that we simply can't accept because it's so counterintuitive to us. That
Are you familiar with something called the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual?
Sure,
Right. Okay. Well, the Diagnostic
we're on
and
five
Statistical
now,
Manual.
right?
I believe so. The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual is a manual that tries to base its diagnoses, the axes upon which it inspects and examines the possibility of a disorder, and it tries to bolster this up through a statistical analysis of the representation of these particular symptoms. So this is a work that has been, from its inception since version 1, something that was strongly based upon statistics. Uh, why does the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual once consider homosexuality a psychiatric or psychological problem, a disorder, and no longer does so? What statistics are we going to say that the statistics they were once using are false, or that they were real statistics but just misapplied? And so what I'm
Well, I
getting at
think
is that the cultural bias that operates within any field can always interpret and come up with the statistics necessary to continue to tell their story.
but that's the thing, though, Bob, is DSM is a psychological manual,
Right.
and psychology is, it's not quite the same hard science in the way where
This is
we
true.
identify things. What we can do is identify something as a problem and then examine the statistical prevalence of it and
Yeah.
be able to diagnose it. At that point, homosexuality was identified as a problem. Now it's recognized as a natural part of a sexual spectrum
Sure.
of human behavior, and it's
By the way,
therefore it's no longer commented on. But we could still analyze it just as
yeah.
statistically.
As an aside, we're correct. As an aside, let me give you what I think is an awesome, ingenious way to help you read the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. Can I do that? I mean, this is just a little aside.
Please tell me it's in like Harry Carey's voice.
No, here's a good way of reading it. Whenever they define a problem, ask yourself, who's reporting this problem? Is it the
I'm
person suffering
convinced.
from? You know what I'm saying? It's mixed.
Oh,
For
right.
example, ADHD, the people
It's
reporting
teachers
the
are reporting.
right, right. In other words,
It's a
they can't
serious
get the
problem
kids to
for
listen
me
to
to
their
be told.
lessons, and so they're saying, "I've got an attention deficit disorder." And we begin to study things. We find out these people don't have an attention deficit disorder; they have an attention effulgence disorder. If anything, and it's just so many times read the who claims this is a disorder, who's it a problem for, and why is that their problem? So sometimes when you just take a look at it that way, that's one of the ways you can start to point out some of the anthropologically cultural biases in that still exist in
Sure.
that manual.
Yeah, and I'll be the first to admit that the DSM is, and actually many other medical practices have sort of their own
Well,
weird
we had to
biases.
codify
Like,
everything
for
for insurance
example,
purposes. Did you not? I mean, it's insurance purposes that really created the codification, and the
sure.
codification already is a reductionism of things that are really not as crystal clear. The truth is, I think there's a lot of people who suffer from certain maladies. We don't even know what they are. We just categorize it some way so to kind of get the insurance to pay for it.
Yeah, and I think there's plenty of idiopathic maladies. I love actually in response to Alan Darley the other day, who listed or made a list of 10 reasons people should reject atheism. Most of them was that God was the best explanation for one thing or another, and my assessment
Yeah.
of that was to say that it is the nominal fallacy combined with a post hoc explanation. The post hoc meaning, of course, I can conduct a story concoct a story to explain anything that I want. We've discussed in the past, the broken vase, and a 6-year-old can tell you a story that very neatly ties up all those loose ends, and is a complete fabrication. And then the other side of it is the nominal fallacy, where we feel like giving something a name means that we understand it. And what I think that a lot of that is we've given we don't know why the universe is here, so whatever that reason is, we're calling it God. That doesn't mean anything. It means that you've relabeled it. And medicine does that quite a bit as well. Things like fibromyalgia is one of my favorite references, because people talk about having fibromyalgia, and that's sure. Yeah, I'm not going to say that it is an imaginary illness, that's psychosomatic. No, I believe it to be a very real thing, and there are very real diagnoses that we can do with paired points of sensitivity and other things.
There are
But
people suffering from symptoms.
right, but fibromyalgia is an idiopathic pain disorder. What that means is you hurt and we don't know why.
Right.
So we gave it a name, and there's plenty of that happens in medicine as well. So I'm not going
It
to
almost sounds like
argue
there's
that,
fibers actually involved.
right. Well, it's fibromyalgia. I think because the The my would be muscle, and fibro related to muscle fibers. Algia is pain, so you have muscle fiber pain.
Yeah.
That's what the name means. And that's what's great about medical names is they do that on purpose so
Right.
that we
Yeah.
can, if you
If we were
have
to translate it in another language, we might have to translate it into something that's the equivalent of "you don't feel so good."
right, exactly, chronically, you don't
Right.
feel so good chronically, and it has sort of a weird pattern that we've seen recurring in other things. But we've gotten
Anyway,
a bit
let's get
off
back on
track.
topic because
Yeah, I was just going to
I'm
say
still
that
waiting
too.
for you to smack me down.
Okay, well, the point that I've been getting around to here, Bob, is that there's 2 points. One was that the sharing of something like this, which is a person who has drawn these conclusions and is, I mean, it's a TEDx talk. The TEDx has had some serious controversy as well for sharing
Yeah.
other wooey and pseudo skeptical, pseudo scientific things. But it has real effects on people. Now, specifically, the genetically modified organisms are very good for the world in many ways. I have an
You
infographic here that
think
says
so?
10 reasons that we need biotech foods and crops from the Genetic Literacy Project. And they help address the global food crisis. They help small farmers. She specifically said they hurt small farmers. That's actually more the patenting of them than the crops themselves. There's the government and capitalistic intertwinement there that's I guess an issue for another day. But the crop yield themselves are much higher. It says that they spur global economic growth. I'm not going to take that one on. She brings up them using more chemicals and says this is a great business model. You sell more chemicals if you produce this, and then it's a feedback loop. In reality, they actually create a much lower use of chemicals. For example, she brought up corn at one point in the video and said that they've engineered corn to now make this pesticide. And that's absolutely right. Corn, by the way, potatoes, and cotton. What they did is we've been using this pesticide for years, and what the pesticide is not a chemical that was sprayed on. It was a bacteria. It was a bacillus. I don't remember the actual name of it here. I've got it. But anyway, so there's a bacteria that they were spraying on that for some reason this bacteria was deterring bugs from eating
Right.
these things. And
Right.
they were able to figure out why. They refined it down to a single protein. And then they took the gene that produces that protein and they put it into
Right.
the genes for the crops. And
Mm-hmm.
it has been very closely studied and regulated and reassessed on multiple occasions to determine that there's not any adverse health effects associated
That's
with
the
this as
story.
compared to
That's
anything
the
else.
story. Right.
And that's
you
the
seen these
best
studies?
information that we have.
Have you seen these studies?
Yes, actually, they have the study is all linked right in the study. It's by the
Yes.
EPA.
Do and have
Words.
you seen these studies? I mean, you've seen that there are studies. Have you seen these studies?
Have I read every single study that they cited?
No, no. Have you read any of those studies? Sure. Yeah. Let's
I
start with
read two of those studies. I looked through. Unfortunately, the abstracts are a lot of what's available. There's two that I could get the full text. So
that.
I read
Right. And
those
I
ones.
would argue that many of those studies are filled with what is non sequitur the word drawing implications that are not really compelled by the study, and the study not really studying that which truly answers the question being answered. In many ways, none of that. But so they've infused this protein into the corn, into the BT corn, and it actually causes the insect's stomach to like explode or something. So that it just
The insects
can't.
seem to have an allergy.
Yeah, yeah.
Ironic.
Isn't that interesting? By the way, I think that is exactly the point, that the insects have an allergy, but all life is related. As a biologist, I think you know that.
Oh, sure.
All life is related, and one of the things and we're starting to get now into the GMO thing. I highly doubt that corn on its own could have ever evolved the development of that protein. Or if it had, it would have taken several steps and many, many years to have done so. However, during that time, the insects themselves would have also been evolving, and some of them finding ways of surviving this, so that this GMO is not just producing a corn. Now, remember, even what we're saying about
No,
the
you're talking about the ecological ramifications of this, right? That
that is
there's
correct. That
yes,
is
and they actually do address that. This study was by
They
the
can't
EPA.
address that, Greg.
Well,
They can't address
what
that.
I'm
It's
saying is that
impossible to address that
they,
because
they
we couldn't
address that
possibly
it
know any of those
exists.
answers until 100 years down the road.
That's my point, though, Bob. Is they address
Right.
that it exists and that it is a potential problem. They
It sure is.
recognize the truth of that, and
So what you're
they
telling
have
me is
taken
these
some
people are
steps.
insanely reckless, knowing full well
No,
that they're
define
walking into
insanely reckless, though.
a
We're
blind
humans.
alley.
We're basically a parasitic organism on the planet Earth here. We
That's
destroy
true. But
everything in our wake. I mean,
yes, that's
what
true.
damage does it do to build a skyscraper or a highway to
Well,
the
we don't really
local
know, but I'll tell you one thing.
ecology? Or
When we build a skyscraper, we are not altering the stuff of life by, by bringing something new into the mix or very different into the mix.
we have caused
We're
more
merely
mass extinctions than any other species on the planet in
That's true, and that's
huge
not good.
numbers.
But a mass extinction is not the same thing as a mass creation.
But
It's
it is in many ways. I mean, we've disrupted the
in
ecological
many ways.
niches in such a way.
But I'll tell you what. There's never been a life form that's gone extinct that didn't already survive on its own at some point in time. But a GMO product has never gotten that way on its own. And although the truth is all of the stuff of life is in constant competition, and everything seems to have natural enemies, and everything seems to have weaknesses and strengths and what have you. But the thing is, it all evolves together, so that along comes a plant that seems to have this unique ability. Well, along comes an animal that can eat it or something, and what have you. And look at what we've done with viruses and bacteria. With MRSA and things like this, in a relatively short period of time, we have actually created or actually encouraged the evolution of super bacteria.
Oh,
And I'm just
absolutely. And what you're talking
I'm
about
just
here
curious
is
what kind
long-term
of little
ecological
bugs
effects.
we're encouraging to be created 100 years down the road because of BT
That is
corn.
an entirely separate question, though. And I recognize the validity of the question. We can certainly go into that. But I feel that for this particular topic, it's a bit of a red herring because we're talking about safe for
I don't
human
consider it red
consumption.
herring. I consider it the main point, the main reason why I oppose
That was
GMOs.
not her main point, though, at all.
No, it
She was
wasn't.
saying that these GMOs are causing food allergies and cancer. Those were we didn't even get to the cancer side of it, but that was her argument that food
Did you know
allergies are causing
now?
or are being caused by GMOs.
You know this, Greg, and we've had this conversation that there are many studies being done by people who do not possess the same set of circles of credibility in science, who are doing a lot of these studies that are being poo-pooed, right?
Hmm.
Now, I find this interesting. These people are doing these studies, and they lack the credibility. But you know what is interesting to me? The people who claim to have the credibility, they're not duplicating these studies to demonstrate. Because I'll tell you something, as a scientist, you can't just poo-poo something by saying, well, there's this reason and that reason, and this is why we don't buy it. Redo the study and prove that it's false.
I disagree to a large extent. You need to first examine the methodology of the study to see if it even is a sound methodology or a valid way of properly controlling for all factors, and that's what the peer review process is for. But you're right, peer review is
Well,
not
it's for a lot
everything.
of
We
things.
also
That's
need to
one of
have
the things it's
duplication.
for. That's one of the things it's for. But I tell you, I read that article about the 168 pigs, and I also read the articles that poo-pooed it. And I got to tell you, the articles that poo-pooed it picked on things that they saw as potential weaknesses, and truly they are potential weaknesses, but not a one of them were relevant to whether or not that potential weakness actually created an inaccuracy.
I
So
don't know.
that
You brought that up last week as well, and I wanted
right.
to address
And so
that
what I'm saying is
specifically.
if that guy should have turned back in his degree, because the only way to have demonstrated that that test of 168 pigs was bogus was to have duplicated the test. And that test was written up in such a way as the methodology used and approached was there. And they could have duplicated that test. And to me, that would have been solid scientific refutation.
I think you're absolutely right. And, frankly, there has been, and I can certainly provide
Yeah.
links as well to, there's one great longitudinal study over many, many generations of huge populations of farm animals eating GMO crops and finding no statistically significant changes in health. Actually, to a large extent, there was actually positive changes in health because of higher nutritional value in the things that they were eating. Oh,
Then
excuse me.
why is there
This
so
is
much
in
why is there such an increase in the use of antibiotics in a lot of these animals, and why are we seeing documentaries that are showing us how sick these animals are?
that's again a completely different question about the methodology of agriculture, how they keep them, they don't give them
Well,
enough
yeah,
room to move around.
well,
I
I'm
mean,
sorry, but it's also a
there's,
part of the whole thing.
but it's
What
not
it
related to
does,
what they're eating.
it skews our ability to say that we're getting useful, trustworthy information.
But what
In other
you're
words,
talking about is the other factors that need to be controlled for, and that's
definite,
why. I mean, the science, we need to
definite,
recognize that we need to compare apples to apples, and if
and
we're
great. Here's the
looking
thing:
at a factory farm versus Uncle
you're
Jim's
absolutely
farm.
right. These need to be controlled for. You're absolutely right. But isn't it interesting that they're not being
They are
controlled for?
being though, and that's
Are they?
the thing I wanted to say though. In the article that you criticized here, that was criticizing the thing that examined the pig stomachs, the 168 pigs.
There was not a single scientific objection to that
Well,
study.
here's a quote here. It says, Dr. Robert Friendship, a professor in the Department of Population Medicine at the Ontario Veterinary College, da, 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 University of Guelph, and a swine management specialist, reviewed the paper. He concluded that it was incorrect for the researchers to conclude that one group had more stomach inflammation than the other group because the researchers did not examine stomach inflammation. They did a visual scoring of the color of the lining of the stomach of the pigs at the abattoir. That must mean butcher, I don't know. And misinterpreted redness to indicate evidence of inflammation. It does not. They would have had to take
How
tissue
do they
samples to
know
compare
that?
histological slides.
How do they know that? I've read that kind of thing in the past.
This is
Where
an
they
expert
criticized.
on
Yeah,
veterinary pathology, and it actually says that here it goes on. It said they would have had to have taken tissue samples and prepare histological slides and examine these
right.
samples for evidence of inflammatory response, such as white blood cell infiltration and other changes, to determine there is no relationship between the color of the stomach and the dead, bled out pig at a slaughter plant and inflammation. The researchers should have included a veterinary pathologist on their team, and this mistake would never have happened. But they did not.
Perhaps.
They
Okay,
found no
and
difference
that's, by
between
the
the
way,
two
as
parents.
valid as that criticism is, that criticism only asks questions. So my suggestion is, why don't they then repeat the study and include the histology?
Well, I just
Why
cited
don't they
another
redo
study
the
that
study?
did repeat it, and you dismissed that one because there's other things. So that
Oh, no,
talks. It wasn't
They
the
did
exact
repeat
same
it.
study, but
They did
it was.
repeat it.
I
They
don't
did
know if this
repeat
one
that
has
study.
been
I don't think it has
repeated,
been.
but I
Because
did cite another study
yeah,
that talked about longitudinal studies of large populations, not 168, but massive
right,
populations of
and we counter the
GMO
fact that
fed.
we have no idea if all of the factors have been isolated, because we also know that these animals are far sicker. They're on far more antibiotics, so we don't know if the reason why some of them are healthier is because of all the antibiotics and not because they're getting better nutrition from their GMOs. We really just don't know that. We can say that if we want to. We can sell this any way we want to, and this is what I'm saying. My point is this: I am not telling you that GMOs are dangerous. I am telling you that this is done so sloppily and so unscientific that the truth is not a single one of these people, both those for them or against them, know what the hell they're talking about.
I think that is an unwarranted conclusion based
I
on the
know.
fact that you are basically dismissing all of science,
That is
and
correct.
that's
I am
you're saying that
dismissing
science is
all of it.
useless.
I
is
am
essentially
dismissing all
the
of it. That's
assessment that
absolutely
you're
correct.
making.
And
Um,
given the fact that we don't know where this is going to lead 100 years down the road with the ecological unbalance, I'm saying this, given the fact that we don't even know what we're
you're
talking about,
almost,
it's
and I know I'm
also
going
very
over time
reckless.
here, so I'm going to
Yeah.
apologize for that, but you're almost going into Psi 10 Bruggencate category here, or territory here by saying, but do you know that? Can you be certain? And
Well, no,
because in
that's not what I'm
science,
doing. Because I'll
nothing
tell you,
is
there is a way of
known
knowing
for
this, but they
certainty.
don't want to know this because they're not doing the research they could do to actually
I
know
don't think
this.
that you have done thorough enough research into what research has been done to even make that assessment or that
Possibly
declaration.
not, but I've
That
taken a
that
look
what
at some of it and I'm
you're doing
unimpressed
is
with what I've
certainly
seen.
making an anecdotal
Yeah,
assessment of what you've
yeah.
seen and dismissing it out of hand, which is extremely common, and that is the benchmark of
Well,
the
you
pseudo
say I'm
skeptic.
dismissing it out of hand, but I don't think I'm dismissing it out of hand. I think I'm seeing some people who are very much seduced by the money to actually not be as honest as they need to be to give us the kind of information that we could actually make a really informed scientific decision based upon it. That's yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to let Bob have the last word on that one and say and next week we may need to come back to this topic and talk about some of the other things that are related to GMO science
That
that
would be wonderful. Yeah.
are great. Or for a special treat, we could go into, Bob could show us how dangerous chemtrails are and that the reptilians are a secret race of aliens that are disguised as our government figures and running the world through the Trilateral Commission and the Illuminati. So join us
Okay.
again
Talk
next
about
week
fallacies.
for Inspiring Honesty when Bob will show us that all of these conspiracies are, in fact, true. Have a great
That was
week.
uninspiring.
And thank you for joining us.